G'day guys, welcome back to TRT Podcast. This is our Q&A special where you guys can send in questions and I'm going to do my best to answer them for you. When are you giving up when you know a horse has pain? For me, there are not many horses in the thousands that I have had to do that. Just because for me, giving up has to have a certain meaning. For some people, they might have gotten a horse for the purpose of jumping 145, and that horse's body is not allowing him to do that. Yes, you maybe give up on the dream of jumping 145, but maybe for that horse it is possible to do casually 90 centimeters once a month. So it's kind of a repurposing or a refocusing, a rehousing to another owner that fits that horse's capabilities better. So I think it's more of a giving up of the human's ideals of what they plan to do with the horse rather than giving up on a horse. I think there's a lot of things, I've had a lot of horses that I've had very extreme cases, horses that have, had a tragic accident, young or old, where they were considered paralyzed or not able to function. Horses that have arrived. I had a foal once that had flipped over on the concrete and the vet said that, it was neurologically not fit. And the owners had bred this themselves from a stallion that was their own, that sat very close to their heart, and they were hoping for another stallion, and it was a stallion, and it was a black stallion that was the same color as the father. And luckily, that heart connection to the father led those owners to not want to give up and say, this horse has to be put to sleep because there is no hope. And of course, that also comes down to perspective. Sometimes we get the advice from even professionals, veterinary advice, clinical health advice from an expert, but that also comes through their filter. Sometimes through the period, I've had a lot of owners with a certain diagnosis that have said, this horse has skiing spine or whatever, and it's better and safer for the horse to be able to put him down, without having done any kind of assessment of what is truly functional and what can be rehabilitated to what level in order for the horse to live comfortably in the field, eating grass, having interactions with other horses, smiling in the sun, breathing fresh air, having a comfortable existence in which the horse can enjoy a life here on earth with humans. And of course, horses' lives are also in our hands. We decide whether they, in the end, should live or die. We decide whether we think that this is a life worth living. We think that. So it's always from our perspective. And that's the same with sometimes the advice we get from an expert, that they even may have the story of this is a sports bred horse, and now he's had this accident or he has this condition. He's no longer going to be able to do that. So, the point of having that vision of what we thought the story should be for this horse is no longer. So we can give up on that. So the next part should be, so what is possible? And in this case, for this black foal that I talked about, he was given condition titles, wobbler or spinal damage. He was neurologically unfit, all kinds of things. And this horse at that age, 3 years old, was not able to just turn in a circle. He would fall over if he was turning in a circle. But the owners really wanted to give him the best possible chance, knowing that there could be a point where he wasn't able to walk, he wasn't able to move. So the quality of life was to a level that maybe he was going to not be able to live as a normal horse, that he would be in a state of misery and discomfort. And then you have to make really the moral choice then of what to do. But they wanted to give him the chance, and this horse rehabilitated. This horse started to make new connections to his body through very simple exercises, proprioception, continuing to make brain and body conversations, to build new lines of communication in the body. He stayed always a little bit of a wobbly, happy guy, but in the end he could be ridden, walk, trot and canter. And he had the most beautiful character, and he had the best outlook on life. Often with humans that go through a very difficult and trying beginning, have the appreciation and are grateful for their position and their chance. And this horse had exactly that. Had a character that every day he was looking forward to seeing humans. He was the horse that would call you first in the pouring rain and the wind to say, shall we heck out today? When everyone else says, it's not a day to ride today. So this was a horse that, of course, could never function in sport, but he could be ridden, he could walk around, he was so social. The grumpy horses he made happy. He joined groups and herds of horses into a friendly community that could eat grass and play and scratch each other and have all the interactions that horses should. So, for me, it's always going to sit with the level of skill and knowledge and ability and want for a human to help a horse. And always it sits with me in the end of, can this horse be able to rehabilitate to a level where he can have a happy life based on a horse's basic needs, not on what our perspective is on what we had in mind for this horse, because he was bred by this stallion and he's a purpose-bred dressage horse, and now he can't be doing dressage, and so it's not, we don't need to give this one a chance. And I think it's also our responsibility when we bring horses into the human world that we have the responsibility to make sure that they have a comfortable chance at life that is separate to our human goals or our intention to have a horse for a using possibility. And so it's always a difficult decision to make. When do you give up? But the giving up part, for me, is subjective. It's everything to do with your purpose that you've set for that horse in your mind. And if we can readjust and we can gain knowledge and we can look for information and we can find ways to help the horses, then there's things that are possible that we are unaware of and that we don't have knowledge about. And I have also friends and other colleagues within the industry that have had own horses in situations like that. And they are professionals and they have a lot of knowledge about helping problem horses, about rehabilitating horses. And they end up with a horse of their own that they're not sure can be helped. And they've had to go out and find other people that have been in other situations with similar cases and do research and knowledge and try things and test things. And, not all of them came out in the end how they would like, but there are also success stories in that where you see real acts of wonder where you cannot imagine that horse was able to get to that place. And I think sometimes it's just a matter of humans giving them a chance, being willing to go outside of your comfort zone and be willing to learn and try to research how we can help ourselves in order to help our horses. And sometimes also when a horse has to be put to sleep, that it is not always the perspective that we gave up. That might have been nature's course. And so who knows what happens after that, but that could have been the purpose. That could be the place in which that horse was meant to go. This was the period of life that he was meant to live. So giving up for me is a strong word. I try to be active in every decision that I think is best calculated through my decision-making skills, but that you always try to do the best in that situation. The giving up for me is to say, this is too much. I don't, still not fitting my situation. It's not something I want to actively do. So you genuinely turn your back and you give up. And that's also understandable. Some people are not in that place financially. They're not, in that situation in their life. But I think, morally and ethically, if we take responsibility to bring horses into a situation, or we buy a horse and we didn't know it had a pre-existing condition, he's now still under our care. So we should do what we can in order to give that horse the best possible time. And if we can't do it financially or because of our situation, then we should at least try our best to find someone who can.